going to go live, but that is not working today. So I am here with Sam Pollack of Cult of Personality, which is an awesome business name, by the way. And you are a copywriter for feminist businesses. So I would love it if you would introduce yourself and then tell us what that means.
So my name is Samantha Pollack, although Sam is what I go by. And I write mostly nurture emails and other email writing for feminist business owners who who want to. Sorry, my elevator speech is like lodged in my brain somewhere.
Do it.
So feminist business owners who want to make an authentic connection with their audiences and their readership, and who want their values, like as a person, as a feminist, as a citizen of the world, to be in line with what they're doing in their marketing. And it often isn't because of the way that traditional mainstream is and works. And I'll tell you more about that in a little bit. But basically, there's a way that you can write copy that doesn't use some of the exploitive tactics of mainstream, like what a lot of people now are calling bro marketing.
Excellent.
There's a way to do it. Yep. Yeah. And there is like regular marketing that isn't super bro-y, but is still using some of these same strategies. And so feminist copywriting is a different framework, a different way to deliver your message that is still effective. And it's not that we're out here not trying to have thriving businesses or not trying to, at the end of the day, sell something to somebody. We are. And what we are doing is doing that in a more transparent, more honest way. And we're not using things like scarcity, false scarcity and urgency, like shaming, FOMO, all the basically negative stuff that are triggers that a lot of marketers use to, I would say, trick somebody into buying something they don't necessarily need, or shame somebody into buying something for the wrong reasons. In feminist copywriting, you don't do those things. You set it up differently.
That's awesome. And you're so right. The way, even the traditional like copywriting training, I remember I took the Artists and Writers of America huge copywriting training. I don't know if you've ever read through that or read their stuff, but it's a lot of those tactics that don't feel quite right. And it's so cool to see that there's actually a movement of people are like, no, we don't have to write this way, and we don't have to sacrifice having effective copy to do that.
And I mean, I will say there are a lot of business owners that have already been shifting their marketing in this different direction, and they don't necessarily think of it as feminist, or they wouldn't necessarily think of themselves as feminist. And that's a whole other conversation, is like what people think of that word and what it really means, etc. There are plenty of people who are doing what they would maybe call values-based marketing. So it's happening, and it is definitely trending. It's just, it's not always identified as quote unquote feminist copywriting, but it is.
That's really cool, because I feel like that is also a solution to a thing people have a lot of trouble with, especially when they're trying to figure out who their targeting is or who their ideal clients are. It's like, oh, you have to niche, you have to pick like this one subset. But then values can be your niche, like working with people who share your values.
Yeah. And also a thing you do can be your niche. Like I don't work in an industry niche, but I do basically niche down to emails. So I will like write website copy sometimes for selective clients, select clients. I guess they're selective too. But it's not like one of my main offers that's on my website right now. So my like main deal is I write emails, and that can be a way that you narrow it down. That's super specific. That's like a super specific thing to say, but it means that there's definitely a certain type of client that needs this type of copywriting, because it's not like necessary in every single industry across the board. So there's a particular type of client, usually like a service provider situation, thought leader kind of thing. But yeah, they could be, I mean, I've had clients in the health and wellness industry. Like I worked with designers before in their copy. I have like coaches and teachers and doctors I've done before. It's kind of all over the place. Counselors. Yeah.
That's awesome. And what you just said about you really only advertise, I guess, that you do email copy, but once you have a client that you trust and you like working with, you can definitely still do other kinds of copy. And I think that's a really cool way of like designing your business so that you don't end up with projects that you hate, or, you know, get tied to a client that's a really bad fit and you've already agreed to do like every kind of copy for them. So that's really cool. Is that how it's been kind of shaking out for you?
Yeah, you know, it's kind of like a chicken or the egg almost, because like the reason that I niched down to emails is because in my, you know, year and a half or 2 years of freelancing before I made that decision, I was doing every kind of copy for every kind of client. And just like, I mean, you know, we all know service providers, we will take on all the work until at some point we figure out the rates we need to charge, how we need to set up our schedules, how not to overbook ourselves. Like all that stuff takes a long time to get straight. And
Yes.
first, all the things for all the people, right? And in doing that, I mean, really, I would say like 90% of what I was writing was email copy. So it's because of how much businesses are online right now. No matter what business you have, like there's an argument for sending emails to your list. Like all these restaurants in Asheville that are closed right now could do really well if they would let me write them some emails for free, which is something I've been trying to get in touch with them and offer, to get people to buy gift certificates or let them know like what's up. And, you know, historically, that's a type of business where they wouldn't even be sending emails, but it's like
Right.
every kind of business could do it, and it would be a good thing to do.
And they already have a list built in, right, from all of their online booking platforms and Grubhub and all this. So totally, it's crazy how this has just any kind of situation can show you, oh, I need to be strengthening this other revenue stream. And that's a really cool idea.
Yeah, there's a coffee shop here. This is a total tangent, by the way, but there's a coffee shop here that it's pretty new. It hasn't been open for very long. And I only recently discovered it, and it's kind of like my new favorite place. Their coffee is amazing. Their staff is like so freaking nice. They make the best coffee drinks. That's like my little treat, is my little oat milk mocha. They make their own chocolate in-house. And it's just like, it's totally an Asheville thing that would even exist. But yeah, it's really good. And they don't have that like pretentious vibe that a lot of craft, like hipster coffee houses have these days.
Yeah.
And what they're really good at is email marketing. So before this pandemic, they would send out an email like I think once a month, and it's like there's a featured drink of the month, and there's an employee of the month, and there's like news. They won an award at some coffee like showcase or something. And like they're a really good example of how important that can be, because what they're doing is they're staying on my radar.
Right.
Like, on there more, and I probably will go there because I know, for example, right now they're open for takeout, and I know when, and I know how to get my coffee from them. Like I'm going to do it because I know about it. Meanwhile, I don't know, there could be other places that are open and I don't know that they are, and I can't find it. So
Exactly. And that's totally, you hit the nail on the head. They're staying on your radar just by showing up. Even if you never like clicked anything in an email from them, you still are like, oh, I didn't know about that drink. Didn't know about that drink. Like it's a great practice.
yeah.
So I guess the theme of our talk is technically setting boundaries, and we're just like, hey, hanging out, not even going there. But so something we talked about together last week, the other day on the phone, was just the way you've learned to design your business around your personal needs and, you know, your own workflow and work style. And I thought that was super interesting, and other people would like to hear about that, especially because I had never heard or really understood the term like highly sensitive person. So can you tell me more about that?
Yeah. that is a multi-part question.
Yes, it was just like a here.
So let me start with, well, I guess I'll start with just how I've noticed that I tend to work and my natural kind of rhythms. I've noticed that a thing that used to happen to me like all the time without fail was that I would be too busy, like I would have too much on my plate. I did not have any kind of real system for organizing my projects, tasks, etc. Like what people use Asana for. I was just like writing to-do lists down on random notebook pages, and it was just like chicken scratch scribbles. That was basically how I ran things. So and I just had like the endless to-do list that never really got a dent taken out of it, and everything that I would plan for I did a lot of like paper planner stuff that I tried. And that's another thing I can tell you about later, but I basically fired my paper planner, which is a big deal for me because I'm very much like a writing by hand kind of person, and I ditched it. I ditched my best self journal. Yeah. Oh.
Yeah. Woo. This is a big one, especially for a writer.
Well, we can talk about it later, but I mean, it was like a huge decision that I like thought about and wrote about for like a week.
Oh man.
Yeah. So anyway, I was disorganized. I was overbooked. I didn't know how to plan my time. But what would happen was I would be so hard on myself about like not achieving some certain level of productivity that I felt like I should be achieving, which is already vague, but whatever it was, I wasn't there. I wasn't doing enough. And then I would maybe push really hard, or I would get to the point where like shit was about to start falling apart. Like I was about to really screw up a big deadline, or I was like on the cusp of like basically just not having this thing that I promised. And then I would like hustle, get it done like the day before. And, but inevitably like in this whole cycle, I would have like a week and sometimes more of just complete crashing and having such an overwhelming to-do list that I would basically just like shut down and ignore it for a whole day or 2 or 3 or a whole week and like watch Law and Order SVU all day. That's like that cycle happened to me over and over again. And, it was frustrating, and I had like a lot of shame about those down times. And so the reason I'm telling you that story is because I have learned, that I'm not a machine. So there is a fixed finite amount of like creative work that I can pump out in any given day. And sometimes that amount is more and sometimes it's less. And there are like certain life factors that I have learned maybe contribute to like whether I can have a big day or not that big of a day. I can kind of predict it, but a lot of times it's just like it's there or it's not there. And that isn't a fault of my productivity. That is the writing process. Like, you know how when I don't know if this happens to you, I'm just going to assume it happens to all writers for my own well-being.
Everything you've said so far, I've been like, been there.
So there's this writing, like the thing, here's an example that is like one of the hardest things for me to write is an about page of a website. So, and this is why I don't do websites on the regular, is because I pour my whole being into writing website copy, and it comes out really great, I think. Sometimes it might be a little wordy, too long. That's my fatal flaw as a writer, is I'm like, I want to say all the things. I don't care if you have a short attention span. Why we need good editors.
Yep.
Yeah. I'll get to the about page and I'll just be like thrashing around, stuck. I don't want to do it. Having so much resistance. I'm not into it. I can't think of anything to say. Nothing's working. And like that happens every single time. It happens every single time. I hate it. And yet there's no version of the process where there's a finished about page that does what you want it to do, that doesn't also have that shitty beginning part when you think you like are going to get fired, or you should never even have this business, or all the other blank page like things that you think. One of the things that I've learned is it's really important is like to build that in as part of the process and know that there's like a period of time that is required time. Like it's a required, necessary part of the writing process. And as such, it should be built into how much you charge for whatever that asset is. Like you should, and I have to say, first of all, I want to hat tip to my business coach. Her name is Stephanie Hayes, and you know her too.
She's amazing.
I definitely want to say that like a lot of the things that I've learned are the things that she taught me.
She like just was like, you have to do this.
I don't want to at any point just be like, and then I'm so brilliant that I just figured this out. I got help. That's, if I'm going to take credit for something, it's for like investing money and time and like doing the things she told me to do and resisting the things she told me to do for several weeks until finally she broke me down. That's also how it goes sometimes. Yeah. But so, and that's one of the things she helped me with a lot is like, the process is the process. You can't make it go any faster. So yeah. And also like, it's not enjoyable to be like, go through these like highs and lows of intense productivity followed by basically a week of like immobile depression. You know, like if you could maybe even this out just a little, like bring this bottom part just a little bit lighter and like chill this part down just a little bit, like
Still a curve, but it's just not quite so dramatic.
Yeah, like I always am going to go
flattening the curve. Sorry.
Hey. Yeah, that's the ticket. Yeah, so I still go through cycles like needing some rest. I just this last quarter, I intentionally took 2 days off, like right at the end of February, I think. And full transparency, this is the first time I've ever planned on taking 2 days off because I knew I needed it. Got into, can you stop?
Oh no, you're cutting out. Oh no. Okay. Okay.
Okay. If you're just joining us, I'm talking about taking time off on purpose and also honoring the time off that I planned to take off. So it's not the first time that I planned to take 2 days off, but it is the first time that I planned to take 2 days off and then got to the week where those days off were scheduled and still had work on my plate that I would have preferred to finish, you know, by the end of the day, Wednesday, that I couldn't finish by then, but I still took the days off anyway. Yeah. So it sounds like it shouldn't be that big of a deal to take a Thursday and Friday off, especially when you make your own schedule and all that. It's kind of the whole reason why we make our own schedules. But yeah, it was important because I could tell that I needed a break. And also because so much of like what we as business owners do is we have our own, you know, our own content creation to pay attention to, and our own, you know, just the running of our business operations. And we have the client work that actually generates the real-time income. And it can be hard to, this is another thing I used to misunderstand about work that I also have fixed and has made a really big difference. Like I used to think of like all the time I spent doing client work was work, and everything I did that wasn't client work was procrastination, like, or not work. So I didn't used to track, like I always have tracked, not always, but like for most of my career as a freelancer, I have tracked my time doing client work. Just to like, you know, cover my own, just to know how long stuff takes me, and just to have that backup of like, ever kind of a dispute, I can show a client a report and be like, I spent 76 hours on this last month, so no, you get no refund. For example, it's just good to have. So pro tip, track your time. But I wasn't tracking like pretty much any other time outside of that.
Admin and everything else, yeah.
Right. And now I track all of it. Basically everything I do, I'm tracking. And that has also, shout out to Stephanie. It wasn't my idea, but so like that again has fed into a correction that I have made in my rates. There was a little bit of like trial and error with it, but my rates needed to be corrected because I wasn't thinking of work as like all of the work total. And when you think of like how many hours a week would you like to work, you have to think of the total of all of it, including client work, including writing a blog post, including like doing your books and whatever else you do, all of it. And then if you want it to be 30 hours, then that's the total amount. And that also means that your availability then for client work is also that much smaller. But then when you know all of that information, you can have a conversation like a sales call and say, oh, well, I'm booked out until January. Because if you know you only have, whatever, 15 hours a week to give to a client, and 2 of your clients already have like whatever, 10 of those hours, then you only have 5 left over to give. So yeah, it's math. It's just math. But it's really like, to me, to bring the conversation back around to setting boundaries is part of it is just like knowing your math. And then when you know the math, it becomes less of this like emotional thing and less of like a question of like charging what you're worth and self-esteem and all these, those are good things to have in your consciousness and good things to like embody and work on, but they're not very clear in terms of the actual number of money that you need to charge for the service that you're doing. And even when people talk about like, especially with copywriting, people talk a lot about like moving away from charging for your time and thinking about charging for the value, because like the value of a sales page could bring in like $100,000 for this client. And so like taking that into consideration, because you want to be valued for more than just your time. You want to be valued for the unique way that you approach what you do, that you can't really put a price on, etc. Even that's like a valuable thought process, but it still doesn't make it easier to just charge a specific number. Because like, to me, at the end of the day, the most valuable thing I have is my time. So like, trying to like guess at what I should charge this person for this one asset when like I know what I want to make for my time. So I just start there, and that has helped me a lot. And that has freed up a lot of headspace that used to be taken up like doing stressful calculations when I was writing a proposal of like how much I was going to quote this person.
Right. And all the angst.
Yeah. Yeah. So I didn't forget the other part of your question, which was about a highly sensitive person.
Yes.
I wanted to set the stage for that first because I feel like the highly sensitive person, also known as HSP for the cool kids, that is something that not a lot of people are familiar with or have learned a lot about yet, but a lot of people are familiar with like the struggle of being a service provider, a creative business owner, selling your creativity as your main commodity, and how to like protect it, but then still deliver the goods and the quality that you want to be known for. Making a smooth customer process so that your customers feel well taken care of, and all the like extra stuff you have to get good at that isn't just, writing.
Right.
So that's relatable for everyone. And the particular way that affects you as an individual has a lot to do with your personality type, your like preferences for interacting with other people, how you interact with them, how often you interact with them, like how they communicate, how you run your feedback process, like all that stuff. So one of the things that made a really big difference for me, especially in how I run my business, was about like a year and a half ago, I think. I was doing a lot of, I was working in therapy a lot on my anxiety. So I am a person that naturally has pretty high levels of anxiety. I don't have like an anxiety disorder, I guess, but it also took me most of my life to even recognize that I had anxiety, or that what I had, that's what it was. I think people I think there's like this perception of what anxiety looks like, of like heart palpitations and like jittery, like tapping your foot all the time and heart racing, kind of panic attack style. And my anxiety doesn't look like that. My anxiety basically is like freeze in place and just like be overwhelmed and not know what to do next. It's very slow and quiet. And so it's hard to kind of pick it out as such. But anyway, once I did, it's a pretty intense like journey of learning about that within myself and how that played out in like how I responded to different situations, what I needed to do to like embrace that part of myself and take care of myself, and et cetera, et cetera. So during that process, I came upon the concept of the highly sensitive person, which had been like in and out of my radar for a while. Like I know a friend who says that she is one, but I never really asked her a bunch of questions about it. So I forget like how I like fully got into it, but there's an online assessment that you can take. And so what the term was coined by a psychiatrist in the 1990s. And it's been around like since that was like 30 years ago. So it's been around in the like field of psychology. It's not like fully embraced by the psychiatric community, but it's not like totally shunned either. You can definitely find some people that think it's like a made up thing. But it's not. And it's not a diagnosis. So that's another thing that is important to understand, is that it's just a collection of personality traits. It is a personality trait, and it's found in about 15 to 20% of the population. But it isn't a diagnosis or a condition or like an itis. It's just a way that you are. And it isn't even really a negative thing either, although it's often painted that way. And that's one of the things that I'm trying to work on, is like changing how we talk about this, because, and as I like, we'll talk about later, but like I'm starting to develop like content related to being highly sensitive. And it's one of the things I'm working on a lot, is like the language that we have to talk about it is negative, and it isn't a negative thing to be. But what it means basically is that you are, the simplest way to put it is you are, extra sensitive to all the things, that your environment, other people, changes in your lifestyle, sudden global pandemics, life transition, negative feedback on an email you just wrote for a client. So a lot of people will have the experience of having been told all their lives that they are quote unquote too sensitive. So that's kind of a clue there. Like maybe like sensitive skin. Like I'm really sensitive to like tags on my clothing, and I always have been since I was a little kid. And I still cut all the tags off. Like if I have like a tag back here, it would be the first thing I would do when I bought this sweater. Yeah, so it's like, it can be like physical sensations, hot, cold, like it can be smells, like perfume or cologne, or like certain types of hand soap, like really gross me out. It can be noises, bright lights. And it doesn't mean that you like can't deal, like you can't be on like a subway car with a lot of overlapping conversations and people in various moods. It doesn't mean that you can't handle that situation. It doesn't mean that you don't like going to parties where there's like a lot of shit going on and there's like lights and there's like people talking in the background. It just means that you don't have as much of like a buffer to like filter out all of that stimuli. It's just like it comes in, like it affects you. And so sometimes people with high sensitivity can also have anxiety because they are often in situations that are overstimulating for them. And because we have no common language or understanding that this is a thing, and we live in this society that's just like, here's a screen in your face, marketers talking at you, yapping at you all the time, like noise, and it's just because of the culture we live in is like already very overstimulating just for everybody. Yeah, it can cause, to me, I think that like learning about this in myself help me understand like why I would maybe go through cycles of depression, because depression is, it like the way I experience anyway, is like my body just like takes a giant weighted blanket that's about 20 pounds too heavy for my body weight and just like stuffs it over me. Like it's just basically like, please stop everything. Yeah. You have no choice now. Yeah.
You're sitting down.
Right. We're not moving. We're watching 8 episodes of Law and Order today. and I think that makes, I mean, obviously you can always engage in magical thinking to explain things to yourself about yourself, but it does make sense to me that being overstimulated all the time without ever, you just need time to like process everything. It's not like you need to recover. And that's what I mean. The language often is like, you need time to recover, which implies that the experience that you just had was negative. But often you need time to recover from like traveling to see your friends for a weekend. That could be a really great, fun experience. And I just need like an extra day to like get home, put all my stuff away, get some groceries, like chill out,
Rest.
have some time, rest, not have anybody talking to me. It doesn't mean that the experience that I just had was negative, or that it's negative that I need an extra day. And I'm finding the more that I'm like writing about this and talking about it, like even the language I have to describe it is implying that the experience was negative. And it affects like my friends who I am like trying to, you know, educate about this, mostly so that they understand, like, if I need to leave this party early, or if I just like want to say no to a thing, that like, here's why, right? Or you want your best friends to like know you and love you and understand you. And even in that process, I've noticed some of these concepts can be pretty challenging, especially for somebody who isn't highly sensitive or is like super extroverted.
Yeah, and if they don't know why you make the decisions you make and have the needs that you do, I mean, I feel like people often take it to a personal place and think, oh no, she doesn't want this. And so, yeah, education makes a lot of sense, because a lot of what you're saying sounds too like the way we talk about introversion. People are like, oh, you need time to recover from being around friends. And then they're like, oh, why don't you like going out? No, you might love going out. You just still need in time or quiet time to recover from that. But yeah, I don't know. I never even thought about the implications of the word recover until you said that.
Thank you. I mean, it's been a little frustrating too, because I'm like trying to write right now. I'm writing a piece about how I have been seeing a lot of introverts posting on social media about how great this is that they get to stay at home all the time, and how I've seen a lot of like snarky like internet humor about like, I've been preparing for social distancing all my life.
I've seen that.
Again, this was brought to my attention by my best friend who is an extrovert and is having a super hard time right now. It's kind of shitty. Like it's kind of considerate, and also it makes me think about how the way we've been talking to extroverts about introverts has been kind of insensitive this whole time. And yeah, I think it's easy to like sit in your identity as like the misunderstood, forgotten, like underdog, right? And that's the same for highly sensitive people or, you know, introverts. That's just one of the ways that like version of the story plays out. But it's a lot cooler to be that person in the story than like the annoying, like clueless status quo. But in that, I feel like we can forget like who's talking to extroverts about how they can thrive. I feel like even before we weren't really talking to them about it, we were talking to them about how they could be better friends and partners to introverts. And like, I guess if I think about it from that perspective, like that's kind of a bummer. And I can see it in my friend, like my friend, like a couple months ago, back when having parties used to be a thing, she threw a party and was really upset because only like 5 people came, and she was like really frustrated. She's like, all my friends are introverts, nobody likes parties, I'm just going to stop throwing parties, because clearly it's like a thing that introverts don't want to do. And I had to like talk her down, but she wasn't wrong to feel that way, because with all of that messaging, like why would you be feeling that way? But I had to be like, no, like I need you to be who you are. That's why we're friends. We balance each other out, you know?
Yeah.
That was another tangent for you.
It was an excellent tangent.
Thanks. So, bringing that together. So bringing like the highly sensitive person, and I guess I can share, there's a link to an online assessment that's just like asks you how you respond to certain situations, or like how you would describe yourself. It's pretty short. And there's a book, but the book is the one that came out in the 90s. So the assessment in there is a little bit outdated. But yeah, it's pretty illuminating. I mean, for me, that was like the thing that did it, is like, I crushed that assessment. I scored so high on it that I was like, oh, well, that explains a lot. So that was kind of my starting place. And then I like, my husband is a therapist, so he has like other material that he gave me. And yeah, so I've learned a lot about it. I've learned a lot about myself. It's really helped me like relax on just like being hard on myself for not being a different way. Right? It's like, it's never going to not upset me if a client has a negative reaction to something that I wrote. Like, as long as I'm doing what I do, it's not a matter of like building up a thicker skin. Like, you can, as a highly sensitive person, you can learn how to be in like overstimulating situations and practice, you know, so that maybe you're a little less like desensitizing a little bit. Like, that's why people who live in big cities can like ride the subway to and from work every day, and they don't like need to recover from it. You know, but they do like have their headphones on and they're reading. They have like ways that they make that as comfortable as possible. Anyway, so understanding that about myself and really like seeing it as a strength. Like, definitely the way that I write and the style of writing that I am best known for wouldn't be what it is if I wasn't also as sensitive as I am. And so I can't try to like excise that from myself and still expect to deliver what I deliver. Now, if that means that it takes me twice as long as some other bro copywriter, it probably does, but like, his copy sucks. So, so yeah, it's helped me be like less apologetic for what I need, and working like right now, my biggest client that I work for, I'm part of a team. So I've had to work on like, that's a whole new realm of like setting boundaries and making my needs clear without like being a difficult, dramatic pain in the ass, and working with everybody else. You know, they all have their own fully formed personalities, and we all need different things, and we communicate in different ways, and we're all really like strong personalities. It's like a ton of creative people on that team. So yeah, and it's actually, it's been a big challenge for me because I kind of had this all figured out. But the way I worked with people was like, you'd hire me, you were my client, that's it. You might have an assistant or like one or two people that I might talk to sometimes, but like, I don't have like team participation like built into my process. And so I've had to like figure that out on the fly with this client, and it's been interesting. And in fact, somebody on the team just yesterday, we got off a call and she texted me and said, I really respect and appreciate how good you are with setting boundaries and how gentle you are with communicating them and all this stuff. And I was like, thank you. I mean, I honestly don't feel like I'm doing that great all the time with it, but it's nice that that just happened right before you and me are having this conversation.
Yeah. And it sounds like having that, the knowledge that you're building up is helping you release, or I don't know, maybe I'm just like adding this and putting words in your mouth, but like, you can let go of some of the angst when you know like, oh, this is part of my process. This is part of who I am. And I don't have to feel guilty about it. So then when I'm communicating it, it's just communicating boundaries. And yeah, like, I don't have to be defensive because I'm not freaking out about it internally.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I will say like, none of this is perfect. This isn't like a thing. And I think it's like, it's been a tough week. And these are tough times for all of us. Like, for example, one of the things that is commonly really hard for highly sensitive people is transitions. So like, if you change jobs, or if you moved, or if all of a sudden your whole life changed overnight and you couldn't go anywhere, just for example. I'm still
a made up example. Can't imagine who would relate to that right now.
I'm still like reeling from that transition, and it's been like 3 weeks now, and I'm like almost settling into it, but I was like, this is going to take a while. And I mean, I know people it definitely seems like this week, a lot of people seem like they're doing a little bit better. I'm not really.
No,
But
me neither.
and it's like, so for example, I would have like a challenging situation this week. Now, my initial emotional response is like at 11, like it's way higher than it normally would be and that I want it to be. What I'm doing differently though is not answering back until like it's more like I know what's happening. I'm not wrong for like being upset about this for a while or like having a stressed out reaction to something. And I can also see there's a lot of factors. There's a really tight deadline that already would be stressful to me. There's negative feedback that already is always upsetting to me. It doesn't happen that often, just I say that. And there's my workout routine is messed up because I can't get my shit together and get out the door in the morning, and then I don't have a plan B. So if it's raining, then I'm just not doing anything, and it's all the lack of structure really is affecting me. So there's a lot going on. So knowing all that just gives me, I'm not stressed that I'm not going to reply to this other guy for like 24 hours. Like he can chill. And I'm not like going to keep engaging in a conversation when I know that whatever I'm going to say, I should just wait. Right.
Yeah.
And that it's helped me do is like, I'm really a lot less like, I think I used to like play tough with clients. Like, you don't want to be, there's like a way that you communicate with clients. You don't want to give off the impression that you're a basket case or you don't have your shit together or that you can't handle stuff. But I am a lot less like uptight now about just like telling people the truth. I'm less into like playing corporate mind games than I used to be. Not that I was ever into it, but I used to feel like I had to more, like not tell people the truth about what was going on. And now I'm like, if I need an extra day, I'm just going to be like, yo, I need an extra day.
I totally relate to like the corporate mind game idea. It's like, oh, I have to, yeah. Right. There's totally a balance between like being unprofessional and pretending like you're, this robot employee.
Yeah, right. And I think one of the advantages of having your own brand where you control all the messaging from the beginning and, starting to build a reputation and also being a writer, like you wouldn't expect to read my writing and then meet me and have me be like a corporate robot.
Right.
I mean, that is the opposite of what my website copy would give you.
It's called cult of personality. Like,
so yeah, and one of the things is that my online personality is pretty edgy and doesn't really pull any punches, whereas my in-person personality is like pretty chill and mellow, and I talk really slowly unless I'm nervous. And so I guess I'm like more mellow maybe than people expect, but that's not like a problem. That's just
is.
Yeah.
I love what you said. I think that would make a great action step for anybody listening, was that you're like, right now everything is kind of wild and it's really okay to give yourself a few minutes to feel more than you normally feel and react maybe more strongly to things with yourself, and then give it 24 hours before you make any decisions or responses based on everything that's going on and everything you're dealing with, because right, it can be a little slower. You can give yourself a minute.
I would also say too, one of the things that I've been trying to work toward is like, I have finally accepted that my hard-won like schedule that I finally had like working great where I wanted it, that isn't going to work for this situation. So what I've been doing is just like
a week on where you had calls, right? And then a week where you didn't have calls. Is that what you mean?
And then a week off where I had no phone calls. That's an excellent recommendation that if anyone wants to try, I highly recommend. So in your schedule, when you take phone calls, any kind of communication like this, there's a week in between where there's none of those. And honestly, I would try to have it where there was that week in between. I didn't also have like a massage or like a counseling session or whatever. Like I would just keep it empty, an empty week. So that was working really well. It hasn't been working so much lately, partly because I am working with a team and they have weekly calls and stuff. And yeah, I've been trial and erroring that. I've been trying to see if I could go every other week or not or whatever. But these days, because things have changed, it doesn't seem as important. But also, yeah, I just had like, I woke up at the same time every day. I would go to the gym or I would go running. I would be in the office by like 10:30, and I was going to an actual office. I would finish around the same time every day. I would eat lunch around the same time every day. Like, it helps me a lot when I have that kind of structure, and it has just been like totally not a thing lately. But what I have been trying to do this week is like, well, what does my schedule need to be like now? And what I'm going to try to do is start taking Fridays off. Yeah, I'm not sure if I can, but I'm going to see if I can. I just think of all the time I'm not like driving anywhere, commuting, although I am spending most of that time cooking, it seems like. I'm just thinking all the little time, like, that I'm not spending on other stuff, like, and I wonder if that adds up to a day off every week. And I've also just been noticing that by the time we get to Friday, I am not doing anything anyway. Like, I find that I am very mentally depleted on Fridays more than I ever was before. Mostly, I think, because of just like the lack of variety.
Right.
I'm like, and another thing, sorry, I'm going on another tangent right now. Hold on. Another thing is that, like, because there are so many people who have lost their jobs, right? And there are so many people who are either scared they're going to lose their jobs, or they did lose their jobs, or they lost their jobs and they have coronavirus, or like, there are so many like shitty positions that a human being could be in right now, that if you have work and that work seems consistent and you can work, like, you should be grateful. We should all be grateful for having work to do. And we are. And it's hard to work right now. Like,
And both of those things can exist at the same time.
Yeah, like, I kind of could use a week off to just like get my head together. And yeah, so, but you know, I have clients who need me, and that feels really good too, because that's helping me focus on something else other than my own kind of like daily panic attacks, which is, I'm actually very grateful that I have a client who needs me right now, because I'm like, that I can focus on. That keeps me grounded. Here's some emails for you. But noticing how it's playing out in I've worked literally in every single part of this house the past. Like, I've been on the couch, I've been at the kitchen table, I've been outside. I was on the front stoop yesterday, still in my pajamas at 4:00, bathing in the sun and on a phone call with my client.
I climbed through the window earlier because Cole was on a Zoom call for 2 hours, and we've set up his desk directly in front of the back door, so you can't get to the balcony. So I went out the window, and then on the way back in, he's still on the Zoom call. I like tripped over the thing and yelled "motherfucker" on his Zoom call. I'm like, yeah, I can see you like in a dry bathtub typing.
I haven't tried that yet. That's the next on my list. Yeah, so I mean, that's another like misconception that has been annoying me on social media, is like, introverts like to leave the house too. I'm sorry, but like,
yes,
I'm trying to pretend like I like this. I mean, I guess I'm better equipped for it than my extrovert friends.
that's accurate.
You know, I'm not like, I don't even know what that feels like. Like, I don't miss people that much. I feel like I'm talking to people way more than I was before. Right? Like,
Yeah, no, totally. It's like people are more accepting of the whole, like, we already do virtual catch-ups and like talking
right.
Zoom just for fun, and now all of a sudden everybody's like, oh, FaceTime, Zoom, it's a thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I confessed to my best friend last week, and I was like, can I just tell you something? It's like, I'm so tired of teaching people how to use tech. Just a private confession. I mean, I'm happy to do it. right? I'm so happy to do it. I'm so glad that like my mother-in-law can talk to her grandchildren now. Like absolutely 100% worth it. It wasn't like annoying. It was annoying for his, for my husband, her son. But when it's not your mom, you're just like, you're doing great. Good job.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, like it's just, it's been interesting. I haven't had to do that much tech teaching. I don't think ever.
Yeah. I haven't had to do too much of that, but I have had to leave group chats this week, even group chats that I made. Just,
You're like, this is annoying. Stop talking to me.
I love you, but I'm sorry. This has to.
Yeah. So that's interesting, but that's another reason why I relaxed my like on again, off again week, because like I have reconsidered my boundaries because there are people who need to talk to me and who are having a hard time. And so that doesn't mean that I'm ignoring a thing that I need, but one of the things I need is to also be a good friend to the people in my life. That takes such care of me when we live in an extrovert's world. Right? Like now the tables are turned, except that they didn't have their whole lives to practice this, and we did. And so I think I'm giving away the blog post I'm like about to publish, but I think we can be better. Introverts, come on.
Get it together, help out a friend. I think that's really beautiful. You're right. You're right. I would like to share that blog post. Please share it with me when you get it published.
Okay. Oh man, that's something else. I know we have to go soon.
What time is it? Oh yeah.
Yeah, but I recently changed my writing process. I built in a brain dumping part. Like it used to means currently does. I haven't started my new process yet, but it usually takes me a really long time to get a piece out of my head and into a place where it's publishable. And usually that's because when I sit down to start writing what I think is going to be the first draft, I start spinning out in all these other directions and like spend a whole bunch of time like following this rabbit hole that isn't actually even relevant. And then it can get so big that I just sort of lose my way and I can't always bring it back. And I get frustrated. Like when it gets to that point, I get frustrated and I start confusing myself. So again, credit to my business coach, but she suggested that I add a part where that's all I'm trying to do is just like write down all the ideas in my head and then try to write a first draft and then work on it from there, which sounds so stupidly simple that I'm kind of like embarrassed to admit that I wasn't doing it that way before. But yeah, there you go.
No, I think I remember hearing a writer, I think it was probably Ash Amberjane, talk about part of her process was I have to lay on the couch and stare at nothing for hours. And yeah, once you realize, oh, that's just always going to be part of it, you can at least think, this is acceptable and this is just going to happen and stop feeling guilty about it.
Yeah. I also was like explaining to a prospect how I price things. And one of the things that I told her was part of what you're paying for is the ideas that I have when I can't sleep at night. Like there's a lot of times when I'm like on a run or like just before I wake up in the morning where like something's on my mind and I end up sort of writing something in my brain. And like, that's kind of what you're paying. So you're paying for me to put my brain on this thing and figure it out. So
right.
that is
Even
also
when I'm not in front of my computer, my brain is still holding space for your project.
right. And so that's another reason why like time isn't a perfect way to price things. But it does help. And I think I would also, here's another pro tip. Usually when I figured out what I want my base like hourly rate to be, then I like double it. Like for that reason, right? So if I'm like putting together a custom quote, I have a general idea of how long it's going to take. I pad it with like some extra hours just in case I'm wrong. And then that comes to amount. And then I said, what would it be if it was twice that? And then those are like my kind of low point, high point when I don't usually charge the highest high point, but helps me kind of get to like where I think the range should be.
Should be.
And it's always higher than I thought it would be.
That is a very relatable experience. Like just that whole journey that you were talking about earlier of figuring out, oh, I have to actually build in this extra padded time that I can't, that isn't client time, but it's still work time and it still has to be part of the calculations.
Yeah.
It's very, very true.
Yep. It's the only place in my life that I've embraced spreadsheets.
But aren't they useful and beautiful?
I guess. Someone else did it for me. I just fill in the numbers.
Even better. Oh man. Well, I think that is a lovely note to end on. The beauty, the necessary evil of spreadsheets. And again, I love that action step that you talked about just giving yourself some time to deal right now with extra emotions that come up from anything that's even small things, and not necessarily replying until you've dealt with that. I love it.
And also being just like open-minded about maybe you need to change your schedule. Well, I mean, especially if there's like people in your world right now that weren't there before.
Yeah. Sharing an office, a lot of people are when you weren't before. I am.
Yeah. One of my friends is working, she works at the courthouse in Boston. And they figured out some ways for those people to work from home. She's working at night now. Like the court is open. She has a baby and he's like doing his baby stuff, napping and crying, and she can't work when he's awake. So she's figuring it out. So now she's working from like 5 to 9 at night or whatever. And yeah.
Just gotta roll with it right now. Okay. Cool. Well, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you hanging out for an hour on your normal, I think, off week. So it's been really good. I have learned a lot. I think other people will too. So